Pacific Rim is bigger than the monster genre.
Eyes on the prize, Gypsy!
Giant robots, massive kaiju, a whole lot of metal shredding, city leveling, adrenaline-fueled chaos. If you're here, that means you must love mech suits. Or maybe you're just another kaiju addict that keeps Pacific Rim on repeat.
Just keep them busy for fuming!
But for real, why do we all watch this movie over and over again?
Over and over and over again.
Today, we're gonna try to figure out why.
Why didn't you tell me?
But before we get to the breakdown, don't forget to like and subscribe. I promise you it'll help us all survive the upcoming kaiju attacks. So, this is one of my go-to movies. You know, a go-to movie is a movie that you own, but also watch it when you see that it's on Hulu.
Hey kid.
Yeah?
Don't get cocky.
I have a bunch of go-tos, but my main ones are Independence Day, Pacific Rim, and World War Z.
Coming over the top!
But of those three, Pacific Rim hits just a little bit different. It's not just a giant monster movie, and it's not just a giant robot movie. It's the perfect marriage of both, wrapped in a visual spectacle that demands to be rewatched again and again.
This is Marshall Stack of Pentecost. Prepare for new handshakes.
Not to brag, but I've maybe seen this movie 50 times at different levels of paying attention. While nowhere near a perfect movie, Guillermo del Toro is an amazing director who knew not to take this movie too seriously, balancing spectacle with just the right amount of fun. Again, that's not to say that this movie is for everyone. Let's break down the characters we need to know so that we can roll right through this thing. First up, our main man, Raleigh Beckett, played by Charlie Hunnam. Your classic hero with a tragic past. He's an ex-Jaeger pilot who left after losing his brother mid-battle.
Raleigh, listen to me!
He then had to walk the Jaeger back to shore completely alone.
I've known one of the pilots been able to do that.
Then he couldn't handle drifting with someone else. I'll explain drifting in a second, but imagine being connected to someone on a level not humanly possible, then feeling that person's fear and desperation in the final seconds of their life. To be honest, I feel like it'd probably give you super PTSD, you know? I'm sorry, I might have made it sound like that's what's supposed to happen when you drift. That's just what happened to Raleigh. Though I don't think the profession of Jaeger pilot is a grow old and gray type of profession. On top of that, Raleigh is brash and cocky. He never saw the big picture on missions, and that hot-headedness isn't not to blame for the death of his brother. I wouldn't say that it's all his fault, but he has to take some of it. After Raleigh gave up the life of being a Jaeger pilot for a quieter life of building a giant wall to keep out kaiju, get it? It's a metaphor for Raleigh starting to build walls in his heart.
Metaphor, huh?
But as we all know, you can't just quit a kaiju war. Raleigh is also kind of the guy we all want to be. He's good looking, smooth, he knows when to be respectful, but he also won't hesitate to stand up if someone is being disrespectful to the people that he cares about.
Apologize to her. Screw you.
He gets pulled back in to pilot Gypsy Danger, but let's meet his co-pilot before we get to the Jaeger. Next we meet Mako Mori, played by Rinko Kikuchi. She's a survivor, a fighter, and she's got the skills to back it up.
You could have taken all of them 2 moves earlier.
But let's talk about what really makes her story so good. Raleigh and Mako are very different people. Raleigh is instinctual, a little hot-headed, and definitely fights from the heart. Mako is disciplined, methodical, and an extreme rule follower.
It's not obedience, Mr. Beckett. It's respect.
Oh yeah, and she's Stacker Pentecost's adopted daughter. No pressure there, right? Imagine training your entire life to fight kaiju, and the guy that saved you as a kid and the world a couple times is your teacher. That's a whole nother level of expectation.
You're gonna always find me in the drift!
Speaking of expectation, she also has a brother, but that's a story for next video. She trains her entire life to be a Jaeger pilot, and then whenever she finally gets her shot, it's almost too late. So when she teams up with Raleigh and Gypsy Danger to take down kaiju, it's in the final days. Like I mentioned, they pilot Gypsy Danger. once the poster child of the entire Jaeger program. A Mark III Jaeger powered by a nuclear reactor instead of plasma cells, making it one of the few machines not vulnerable to an EMP attack. Gypsy Danger is a brawler. It doesn't rely on long-range missiles like Striker Eureka or pure strength like Cherno Alpha. It fights up close, throwing punches and taking hits like a true bruiser.
Let's finish this!
And of course, its weapons loadout is iconic. The plasma cannons are deadly at mid-range, but the real star of the show? The chain sword, a retractable blade that cuts through kaiju like butter.
Sword deployed.
Gypsy Danger is also built to last. It survived being tossed through buildings, dragged through the ocean, and even launched into space without breaking down. It's a super tank that's almost invincible. It's a symbol of humanity's will to fight, and whenever it steps into the ring, you know that it's about to go down. Stacker Pentecost, played by the champ Idris Elba. The legend, the warrior, the reason that this movie sometimes feels like a religious experience.
Today we are canceling the apocalypse!
And besides having the coolest name in the history of monster movies, he's a former pilot himself. His Jaeger was Coyote Tango, a Mark I Jaeger until radiation exposure forced him to command from the sidelines, making him a really weird age for Jaeger pilots.
Oh my God, all my friends are dead.
The radiation exposure caused cancer, and the cancer is killing him, so he's literally on a race against time to save the world before it's too late. Earlier on, he would have just done it himself, and that was only a decade ago, but even off the field, he's still the most intimidating person in the room, by far. It's kind of sad, he's the perfect pilot, but he can't fight.
I carry nothing into the drift.
That means that he must have an unbelievable control of his emotions. Herc and Chuck Hansen, the only father-son pilot duo in the Jaeger program. Max Marini is Hercules Hansen, aka Herc, a veteran, an old school, tough as nails, and one of the few pilots still standing from the early days of the Kaiju War. But, again, it's only been 20 years. He knows what it means to lose a drift partner in battle, and he tries his best to keep his son grounded, even when Chuck's ego gets in the way.
I never knew whether to give him a hug or a kick in the ass.
Chuck Hansen, played by Robert Kaczynski, he's Australian, he's cocky, and initially, he's a total jerk. But he's got the skills to back it up, which just adds to his annoying nature. He grew up in the shadow of his father, always trying to prove himself. His attitude makes him hard to like at first, but as the movie goes on, he shows that he's more than just this hotshot pilot.
He's more my co-pilot, right, Dad?
That doesn't even make sense, Chuck. They're in Striker Eureka, the fastest, most advanced Jaeger in the program, built for precision strikes and speed rather than brute force. Unlike Gypsy Danger, which relies on a plasma cannon and a sword, Striker Eureka is a missile-loaded war machine designed to be the ultimate Jaeger. And together, Herc and Chuck are a force to be reckoned with, and though they don't always see eye to eye, they do share a father-son bond that can't be broken. Now, our science squad. Newt, played by Charlie Day, and Herman, played by Bern Gorman. They are quite a team. Newt is a kaiju fanboy that thinks that it'd be great to drift with a kaiju brain. Spoiler, it's not that fun.
Newton created a neural bridge from garbage and drifted with a kaiju.
Until he realizes that the kaiju are all linked through a hive mind, and that opens up a whole new can of problems. Basically, Herman handles the math and Newt handles the biology. They're a small but very effective team.
Are you still an effective team?
Last but not least, Hannibal Chow, played by the legend Ron Perlman. He's a black market kaiju organ dealer. His iconic suit, gold shoes, and bad attitude makes him the perfect character for a movie like this.
Your name? I took it from my favorite historical character and my second favorite Szechuan restaurant in Brooklyn.
We also have to talk about the other Jaegers, even though we don't know much about their pilots. Cherno Alpha is a Russian tank. This Mark I Jaeger is a walking bunker, built for raw power and endurance. And hopefully they added radiation shielding. It's the heaviest Jaeger, loaded with massive reinforced armor and brutal piston-powered fists. It's not about speed. Cherno Alpha is about taking hits and hitting back even harder.
Make no mistake, Mr. Vicky, it's a brutal war machine.
It's piloted by Sasha and Alexis Kananowski. This husband and wife duo had one of the longest records in the program and by far the best hair. Next is Crimson Typhoon, the most unique Jaeger in the fleet. This Chinese triple-armed Jaeger is specialized in fast acrobatic combat, taking down kaiju with its spinning blade attacks. It's piloted by the Wei-Tang triplets. This is the only 3-pilot Jaeger, making it one of the most efficient machines on the field.
No alloys, 50 diesel engines per muscle strand. Deadly precise fighter.
Their speed and precision were unmatched, but like Cherno, they went down way too soon. Still, their fight was one of the most visually stunning moments in the film, also showing us that these kaiju aren't playing around. Okay, for real, last thing, before we go to the breakdown, we have to talk about drifting. Drifting is the only way to pilot a Jaeger, a neural link between two pilots that merges their memories, instincts, and reflexes into one single fighting force. But it's not just about connecting. It seems to work best if one of the pilot respects the other pilot and follows that pilot's lead. I mean, look at the pattern. Raleigh follows Yancey, Chuck follows Herc, Mako follows Raleigh. The pilot on the right has to have emotional control, acting like the right side of the brain, processing feelings and not letting them take over. That balance is what makes a drift team successful.
Left hemisphere, right hemisphere, pilot control.
And now it's time to rip this movie open like a kaiju getting hit with a chainsword.
Sword. Deployment.
Humanity is on the edge of extinction. The Jaegers were winning, but then the kaijus got smarter, stronger, and way deadlier. Raleigh finds that out firsthand when he and his brother Yancey pilot Gypsy Danger against Knifehead, a Category 3 kaiju off the coast of Alaska. They initially hold their own, displaying seamless drift compatibility, but their overconfidence proves costly. Knifehead pretends to be KO'd, but then launches a brutal counterattack, tearing through Gypsy Danger's cockpit and ripping Yancey out. Raleigh is still neurally linked to his brother, so he experiences his fear and pains in the final moments of his life, making it nearly impossible for Raleigh to keep fighting. But with no other option, he manages to regain control of the damaged Jaeger, killing Knifehead with a final plasma cannon blast before dragging himself and the machine to shore, scarring him physically and emotionally for the rest of his life. I mean, he is completely broken by this and he leaves the Jaeger program. But for lack of a better option, he's eventually dragged back into service to pilot his old Jaeger Gypsy Danger with Mako. But choosing her isn't the easiest process. It's a long and arduous process with a lot of convincing. Stacker Pentecost lines up a whole crew of trained pilots for Raleigh to test with. And let's just say it doesn't go well. None of them can match his style, his instincts, and they can't stay in sync for very long.
Can we change this up? How about we give her a shot?
Then Mako steps in. She's not even supposed to be an option, but when she does, it's electric. Stacker tries to shut it down, but even he can't ignore the chemistry. But again, you have to remember that he has to trust Raleigh with his daughter, and I think that the only thing that makes him say yes is that he knows that Raleigh ran a Jaeger alone, just like he did. From the moment they step into this training match, it's clear Mako can read him. She doesn't just keep up, she matches him move for move. She's precise and disciplined, and she's been waiting for this moment her whole life. And Raleigh immediately steps into the teacher role, which is extremely new for him and probably not what Pentecost expected.
It's a dialogue, not a fight. But I'm not gonna dial down my moves.
So that means that Raleigh, the hothead, is now stepping into the right brain role that we talked about, which Pentecost isn't happy about for a lot of reasons. Yeah, one of those reasons has to be that Raleigh and Mako never outright have a romantic arc, but their connection is weirdly intense. It's deeper than just being co-pilots. The Drift makes sure of that. They share memories, emotions, and trauma. It's a level of closeness that people never experience, so there's no need for a kiss or a confession of love. Their bond is something else entirely. But remember, they're not just fighting kaiju, they're fighting their own fears and trauma from losing their family. Meanwhile, Mako sees this as her chance to prove herself, not just as a pilot, but as someone that's ready to carry on the Pentecost legacy. So, time for them to give it a shot. Their first test run nearly ends in disaster when Mako flashes back to her childhood trauma and nearly fires Gypsy Danger's plasma cannon inside the Shatter Dome and would have definitely killed everyone.
Take him offline! I just did!
But they're forced to get it together when a double kaiju event happens. Hong Kong gets hit hard when kaijus Otachi and Leatherback tear through the city. Cherno Alpha and Crimson Typhoon are the first to engage the kaiju attacking the city. Crimson Typhoon, known for its agility and 3-pilot system, starts strong, using its spinning blade weapons to land several hits on Otachi. But it's quickly outmatched when Otachi uses its prehensile tail to grab it and disable the Jaeger, following it up with a brutal attack that crunches down on the cockpit, taking out the Wei Tang triplets in seconds. With Crimson Typhoon down, Cherno Alpha charges in. Teamwork really isn't a thing in Pacific Rim. But yeah, charging in, relying on its sheer strength and heavy armor to tank Otachi's attacks. But it's ambushed by Leatherback, another massive kaiju built like a tank. Cherno Alpha holds its own for a while, but Leatherback uses its immense strength to tackle the Jaeger and drag it underwater, drowning its pilots in a devastating display of raw power. With both Jaegers destroyed, Striker Eureka moves in to take control of the situation. Its speed and missile attacks are proving effective, but before it can deal any finishing blow, Leatherback unleashes a massive EMP blast, disabling Striker Eureka and rendering it completely useless. So now, Pentecost has no other Jaegers left standing. Hong Kong's fate now rests in the hands of Gypsy Danger, the only analog Jaeger left unaffected by the EMP blast, leaving Gypsy Danger as the last hope.
Gypsy! King is off!
So the difference is, Raleigh and Mako don't just fight the monsters, they strategize and adapt. First up, Leatherback. The kaiju is massive, brutish, and dangerous, using its immense strength to throw Gypsy Danger around like a rag doll. At one point, it even tries to get on top of the Jaeger like Joe Rogan on a stool, trying to tear its head off. But Raleigh and Mako stay cool, firing up Gypsy Danger's plasma cannon. They unload shot after shot into the kaiju's chest, melting through its thick hide until it finally collapses dead. But Raleigh has learned from his mistakes.
I think this guy's dead, but let's check for a pulse.
Okay.
Before they can even celebrate, they see the destruction from Otachi from across the bay. This fight is different. It's not just brute force, it's now speed and precision. Otachi uses its massive wings to stay out of range and attacks from above, trying to take Gypsy Danger apart with its acidy spit mouth and its powerful claws. When the Jaeger gets lifted into the sky, things are starting to look bad, but then the game changer.
Sword deployed.
Gypsy Danger pulls out its chain sword and slices Otachi clean in half mid-air, bringing the monster crashing to the ground. But the battle isn't over yet, because now Raleigh and Mako have a new problem. They're falling from the stratosphere with nothing to slow them down. As they hurtle to the earth, Gypsy Danger's systems struggle to regain control. Raleigh and Mako work to stabilize the Jaeger, but without full power, there's not much they can do except for brace for impact. The giant metal warrior crashes down hard, and where else could it land but in a soccer stadium? Talk about being on target, am I right?
Huh?
The stadium erupts into a massive fireball, and for a moment it looks like they might not have made it. But then Gypsy Danger emerges from the smoke, still standing. The battle may be over, but the war is still very far from won, but they can celebrate, if only for a minute. This is one of the most satisfying moments in the film, a reminder that sometimes a good old-fashioned sword is the best weapon against a giant kaiju. Afterwards, Newton Herman discovered that the kaiju are clones mass-produced for invasions, and soon, whoever it is going to start sending multiple at a time.
That's what I was trying to say.
Yourself. Just hear me out for a second. Give me a second, please.
To be honest, I don't really know how Herman came up with that conclusion, and I'll pay someone if you can make that make sense to me. Comment below.
These are lies. Numbers are as close as we get to the handwriting of God.
Pentecost then realizes that the only way to win is to take the fight directly to the breach. Oh yeah, the breach is where all the kaiju come from. It's in the middle of the ocean. But before we get to the final battle, we have to talk about how we even got to this point. I mean, we almost didn't talk about Hannibal Chow, the black market kaiju parts dealer. He's a key player in understanding just how big this war really is. He makes a living, and I mean a good living, off of harvesting kaiju organs, bones, and whatever else can be sold to the highest bidder. This guy is not in it for saving humanity. He's there for the money. But ironically, it's his operation that helps provide crucial information about the kaiju's biology. When Newt drifts with a kaiju brain, he discovers something massive. The kaiju aren't random monsters, they're bioengineered weapons sent by an interdimensional species to wipe out humanity.
I think they're attacking us under orders.
And Newt thinks he can get even more information if he just does it one more time. So he and Herman drift with another kaiju brain. But there's just one problem. The only one that was available is a freshly hatched baby kaiju from Otachi. And that's where Hannibal Chow came in. He got them there thinking that he might make a quick profit before all of these things die or dry up or whatever, only to get swallowed in a scene that is both hilarious and gross.
Ugly little bastard. Anyway,
Once Newt and Herman finally figure out that the breach only opens for kaiju DNA, the strategy completely changes. This isn't about defending humanity anymore, it's about ending the invasion at the source. In the final battle, it's all or nothing. Gypsy Danger, the Jaeger with a big heart, is tasked with escorting Striker Eureka to the breach. They brought a very big bomb.
We're gonna strap a 2,400-pound thermonuclear warhead to Striker's back.
But before they can even reach it, they're ambushed by two massive Category 4 kaiju, Scunner and Raiju, along with the first ever Category 5 kaiju, Slattern. Striker Eureka, this time piloted by Stacker Pentecost and Chuck Hansen,
My son you got there. My son.
fights hard, using its speed and precision to land direct hits. But when it becomes clear that the kaiju won't let them reach the breach, Pentecost makes a call. He and Chuck will detonate that big bomb that we were talking about and clear the way for Gypsy Danger. In their final moments, Chuck and Pentecost show why they're true legends. Go ahead and name every elementary school after them. They take out multiple kaiju before going down in a massive explosion, leaving only Slattern standing. With no backup left, Gypsy Danger charges towards the breach. Slattern, the biggest and most powerful kaiju yet, nearly overpowers them, but Raleigh and Mako refuse to back down. They weaken it with plasma cannons and finally land a kill shot with the chainsword, taking out the last kaiju guarding the breach. That solves the breach problem. If you remember, the breach won't let anything through unless it has kaiju DNA. Raleigh and Mako use the remains of Slattern and trick the portal into opening. With no other choice, Gypsy Danger dives into the breach, dropping its nuclear reactor straight into the portal's core. Raleigh sets the detonation timer and prepares for one final escape after Mako loses consciousness during the descent, forcing Raleigh to put her in an escape pod first.
All I have to do is fall. Anyone can fall.
As the reactor counts down to the detonation, he manually launches himself out just in time to avoid the blast. The reactor detonates, destroying the breach from the inside, collapsing the portal and sealing the alien dimension permanently.
Well, kinda.
And the kaiju invasion is officially over.
Well, I kinda did!
Raleigh and Mako make it to the surface in the ocean, barely alive but victorious, and for the first time in years, humanity can finally breathe. Now it's time to review this bad boy. Pacific Rim is one of the most rewatchable movies ever, and the reason is simple. It doesn't overcomplicate itself. This movie knows exactly what it is. Giant robots punching giant monsters. No unnecessary huge subplots. There are a few, but there's nothing crazy. No excessive world building, just pure blockbuster fun. You can jump in at any point and immediately know what's going on. Kaiju bad, Jaeger's good. Fight.
Sword. Deployment.
That being said, it's not perfect. This movie has some of the worst dialogue in the history of cinema.
How sick are you?
Why didn't you tell me?
Why didn't he tell you he has cancer?
That ain't none of your damn business.
Exactly.
There are lines so stiff and unnatural, they sound like a video game NPC glitching. Half of the characters talk like they're in a Saturday morning cartoon, and the other half speak entirely in exposition. But here's the thing, it doesn't matter. Pacific Rim never pretends to be high art. It leans into its cheesiness, giving us a movie that's just as funny as it is action-packed, even if some of the lines make you wince a little. At the end of the day, it's a movie that understands the assignment. Give the audience mechs, monsters, and mayhem, and let them have a blast watching it unfold over and over again.
Reactor override now!
And the acting, it's solid. Idris Elba, legendary. CGI still looks incredible. Jaeger design is top tier. If there's one weak spot, it's that some characters just don't get enough screen time. But overall, this movie knows exactly what it wants to be, and it nails it. So the final verdict is, I like it, but it's not a world-changing movie. It's action-packed and it's just a for fun movie, so stop taking yourself so seriously and just enjoy it. So is it the most rewatchable movie ever? What are some of your go-to favorites? Go ahead and leave that in the comments.
Today we are canceling the apocalypse!
Like, subscribe, and let me know which Jaeger you'd like to pilot the most. Alright, I'll see you next time. Hey, thanks for watching. Click here for more videos and subscribe to keep up with all the Blake's World updates. I'd appreciate it. Alright, I'll see you next time.